Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And first, we will start with the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission this week, which approved an increase in electricity tariffs for high-value customers on Band A, who get up to 20 hours of electricity in urban centers around the country. Other customers would not be affected. NERC, at a briefing in Abuja, said it approved the increment through power distribution companies. Arise correspondent Olije Wapera reports.
The vice chairman of the market competition rates at the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, Musiliu Oseni, says the commission approved the increment of the power distribution company's discos by pegging it at 225 naira of kilowatts per hour. But it says the new rate applies only to urban consumers in Band A who receive a minimum of 20 hours of power supply.
The commission has approved a rate review of 225 naira per kilowatt hour for just under 15% of the customer population in NERC. So that means that less than 15% of the customers will be affected. And you recall the number, I'm sure you are aware of the number of customers we have in NERC, and these are the customers that have been proven to be enjoying 20 hours average of supply.
The NERC says the customers in Band A represents only 15% of the 12 million electricity customers in the country. All other consumers are expected to pay the normal rate of 68 naira of kilowatts per hour.
Many of the customers, if are to classified as Band A customers, will not be affected. So I've told you that the Commission is leveraging on technology to ensure that we get access directly to the distribution system and get the data. As the data is being fed from the meters, the smart meters that have been installed on the feeders, we are getting in real time or near real time. We don't give the discos the opportunity of any manipulation of data.
The regulator attributes the tariff increment to the cost of electricity generation, noting that the fluctuation in the exchange rate has continued to impact on the economy. As a result of this, consumers would have to pay more for investors to recover their operating costs.
The effect the Commission had going into January was maintain status quo will fund the subsidy. But I think the fiscal unsustainability of the subsidy has become apparent to everybody. So in line with what other governments of the world do, government has just said, you know what, I cannot continue going at a rate of 240 a month. What I can cover now is something around half of that. So the Commission will continue to do the responsibility of designing the tariff calculation for what is cost effective. The government can determine at any point and say, this is how much I can afford the subsidy. The discos will then have to adjust their own tariff design in a way that allows them to recover revenue that is required to make that happen.
The regulator also says the government cannot continue to bear the brunt of subsidizing electricity alone, but is, however, working on programs to close the metering gaps across the country. Olije Wapera, Arise News.
Well, it does seem that Nigerians are facing higher electricity costs coming after fuel subsidy was also removed, coming after the Naira has crashed. It seems that we are facing hard times, as the president promised. He did promise that we would face hard times before we face better times, but it seems that we're just facing harder and harder times. And now yesterday, the Minister of Power, Mr. Adelabu, did go on air and promise that possibly more, they're going to remove even more subsidies and that the price of electricity might increase across all bands. Now, obviously, this rollout, I would say, has been less than impressive by the federal government. We have seen the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company be punished, with a fine for the increase of people who are not on Band A. And obviously a lot of Nigerians are in their houses today with higher fees thinking, I never had 20 hours of light a day, so I was never aware that I would be facing this increase in in electricity fees. Now, the Minister of Power did come out and say that he believes it's insensitive for us to expect the federal government to subsidize electricity, I believe, to the tune of $3 trillion in the power sector. Again, I don't know if it's the insensitivity of the Nigerian citizens that's the situation. That's really the crux of the issue here. I think we should talk about the insensitivity of the federal government. We are facing increasingly higher costs of living within the country. Of course, interest rates going up means businesses are finding it harder to survive within the country. And there seems to be no reprieve and no word of help coming from our federal government. It seems that they're just telling us to strap in. It's getting harder, but I don't see any reprieve coming. How about you?
This I must say that some have looked at it from a technical point of view. Because when you look at it closely, some are saying, most people are saying it's a glass half empty. And some are saying that for businesses, if truly this light is available, it will actually ease the cost of business and actually reduce the cost of business, because the amount of monies that are actually shelled out on a daily basis for diesels, turnaround maintenance of generators and the rest of them will go down. But that is if they get the power supply.
Yes.
If they do, it makes a lot of sense, because it's cheaper to run with what they call it, with electricity, than trying to generate your own personal electricity.
Definitely.
That's one thing. But the question is, do we enjoy that much power supply for this to actually make sense to the average Nigerian? That's the big question.
Well, we wait and see.
All right, let's tell you that Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has officially signed the student loan bill into law. The bill's enactment comes after the repeal and reenactment of the Student Loan Act of 2023, following a campaign promise by President Tinubu's initial delays led to a missed start date in January of 2024. During a brief signing ceremony at the presidential office at the Aso Rock Villa, President Tinubu reiterated the vital role of education in poverty alleviation and reaffirmed the government's commitment to ensuring that every citizen has access to quality education and opportunities for skill development.
I've just signed a bill proclaiming the student loan effectively. First of all, I must thank the members of the National Assembly for their expeditious handling of this bill, considering the children of Nigeria, that education is the tool to fight against poverty effectively. We are determined to ensure education is given the proper attention necessary for the country, including skill development programs. This is to ensure that no one, no matter how poor their background is excluded from quality education and opportunity to build their future. We are here because we are all educated and we are helped. In the past, you've seen a lot of our children drop out of colleges and given up the opportunity. That is no more. The standard and the control is there for you to apply, no matter who you are, as long as you are a Nigerian citizen.
This is a very good day, very great day for the country, great day for education, great day for Nigerian students and who have great need, for support. And we want to thank Mr. President for his compassion and his passion for the downtrodden, actually, who are the beneficiaries of this scheme. Now the days when students will be struggling to sponsor themselves in their various educational endeavors is over, both at the tertiary and those who are seeking skills, who are seeking to be skilled, to be empowered, to move on with their lives. So it's a very great day for the country.
This is commendable. As for Nigeria students that I represent, we are happy. We see Mr. President's commitment to the development of education. And today, the entire education system is happy. The Nigerian students particularly are happy. Our parents are happy that, yes, in Nigeria, even the children of the poor can have access to quality education. We see Mr. President's commitment and the signing of the bill today. It shows that Mr. President is a father of modern education in Nigeria, and the initiator of this bill is a hero of education. So we are happy.
So, what do you make of this new reenactment, so to speak?
Yes. I mean, the bill has been updated to make it, I believe, more tech-friendly, more aligned with this, I would say, more 2024 friendly. We are expecting, I think, 200 billion naira in the first year of the program. It's obviously a sigh of relief for Nigerian students who have been waiting for this bill, as the president did promise it, and it has seen delays over and over again. But again, I am happy that the bill has been passed, and it shows that when the federal government is focused, when the National Assembly is focused, they can get a bill through in very expedient time, and they can pass things speedily. So I would hope that this will show us that the 10th Assembly is going to be more willing to be very efficient and effective when it comes to their legislative responsibilities, because if they can do this for the student bill because the president is backing it, then I believe that other human rights or people-friendly bills, other laws that we do need passed, do get the same treatment of dedicated effort from all houses and from all arms of government.
Yeah, I must say that I'm happy that the entire government now, and when I mean the entire arms of government, from the legislative to the executive, listen to the yearnings of the people and the inadequacies that the bill actually portend. And they were able to fix some of these problems, hence the repeal and the reenactment, because there were too many lacunas initially. Of course, I do not want to, time will not permit us to want to delve into the application and how it will actually work down to the fine details. Yeah. But one thing is certain, and what gladdens my heart is that they saw that the 2023 bill was very inadequate and left too many gaps, too many holes, too many lacunas, which have been filled, which have been worked on, and we're now happy that more people are being included, because that particular net was going to only exclude quite a lot of people. Thanks to the fact that if you've ever owed, if your parents had ever owed loans in time past, you've been excluded. If you probably did not earn up to 50,000, if your parents were earning probably from 45,000 and above 50,000, you were being excluded. All that has been put into this particular bill right now. Now, one thing is for these kind of things to come to the fore. The second thing will be application. The third thing will be general execution and also appraisal, because we have even seen from the American system that this kind of scheme is not bulletproof, so to speak, because it leaves you with literally a noose around your neck for a long period of time. So we are hoping that they can continue to probably refine this particular bill, that it helps the Nigerian people, and like the president says, no one is excluded from qualitative tertiary education here in Nigeria.
Definitely. Now let's move on to another story. We're going to go to South Africa, where the former Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, turned herself into police custody following her resignation over corruption allegations. She arrived at a police station in Centurion near Johannesburg and is set to appear in court on charges of soliciting bribes for awarding contracts during her time as Defense Minister. Mapisa-Nqakula resigned on Wednesday, stating it wasn't an admission of guilt, but a response to the seriousness of the probe. The 67-year-old, a veteran of the anti-apartheid struggle, became Speaker in 2021 after serving as Defense Minister for 7 years. Her resignation comes amid the ANC's challenging election campaign marred by corruption allegations. Well,
okay.
So, you know, this minister is the speaker, this is the second speaker in this same administration that has had to resign. The ANC is facing possibly their most challenging election cycle since the end of apartheid in 1994. Now, she is a former, I would say, Thabo Mbeki ally. That's how she rose to power. She was part of Mkhonto we Sizwe during the apartheid struggle. And it's, I would say, a very sad thing to see a woman of her stature on the dock facing these kind of these serious, you know, allegations and these types of charges. But I will also say that apart from the shamefulness of the extent of the charges she's facing, I do think it's a positive step that she has stepped down. I do think that the integrity of their parliament is incredibly important. And I do think I would take it as a signal to Nigeria as well, that at the end of the day, there should be consequences for poor actions. And I think that's what we're seeing in South Africa, is that if there was a motion of no confidence that was tabled, I believe, 2 weeks ago by the opposition parties. Yes. So you do also see the importance of a strong opposition to a democracy and to keeping, to having checks and balances within systems. So I mean, it's sad for this speaker, but I do believe that this is how these things should go. If you're facing corruption allegations, you should not be a serving member of government, especially when the allegations are this severe and this significant. But again, this is obviously coming just, I believe, 2 months before the next elections in South Africa. So I'm waiting to see how the ANC is going to survive this storm.
One thing is certain, for a very long time right now, for some, this will not come as big news, because for a very long time, the ANC has been riddled with corruption allegations time and time again. And the only thing that gladdens my heart watching from a spectator's point of view is the fact that the way democracy is run in South Africa is completely different from the way democracy is run in Nigeria. Because we've seen people like former President Jacob Zuma literally being strolled into the courts to answer for financial malfeasance, to answer for inadequacies during his time. And this is quite instructive because here in Nigeria, we rarely see that happen. And the fact that the law protects those in power from facing prosecution, it's almost ridiculous because so many people have answers, so many people have to answer for several actions they have taken. But we've seen them move from one position to another and using the immunity that the office provides or the law provides as a shield for answering to those crimes. And before you know what's happening, sometimes these, I'm not calling anyone out here, but some of this law enforcement actually do develop selective amnesia. And some of these crimes have been swept away, so to speak. So many have answered for it, but sometimes you need to answer for it at the time in which probably some of these allegations come to the fore. You do not have to wait 4 years, you do not have to wait 8 years, you do not have to wait 12 years because someone is actually probably going around the circles of government and being protected by the immunity clause. That should not be when something like this happens. Because if it was in Nigeria, would it be able to answer for, or would she be able to answer for it? The answer is almost no, because she's still within the corridors of power. And the law states that immunity is actually something that covers her at that very point in time.
Well, I would say, especially for Nigeria, as you've said, immunity doesn't cover all members of government. So some of
when I mean members of government, I mean elected. Because, for example, if you're a governor and probably after 7, maybe 4 to 8 years as a governor, you now move from the government to the National Assembly.
Yes.
So you're still a member of government and you're still being protected by the immunity clause. So you look at all that, and someone can be there, someone can be in the National Assembly for 12 years,
Yes,
for 16
definitely.
years. And when will they get to answer for the crimes that have been leveled against them, or the allegations that have been brought to the fore in regards to corruption? Now let's talk about the aid charity World Central Kitchen has demanded an independent commission to investigate the killings of its staff in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, saying the Israeli military could not credibly investigate its own failure. The aid workers were killed on Monday when their convoy was hit shortly after they oversaw the unloading of 100 tons of food aid brought to Gaza by sea. WCK founder and celebrity chef Jose Andres has said the Israeli attack had targeted his workers systematically, car by car. The US and Israel's other allies called for an explanation into the incident amidst widespread condemnation. Israel said on Friday that its inquiry into the incident has found serious errors and breaches of procedure by its military.
Honestly, the situation in Gaza right now, where you have half the population facing starvation before starvation. Well, meanwhile, Israel has made public the findings of an inquiry into the killing of 7 aid workers in an airstrike in Gaza this week and found serious errors and breaches of procedure by the military. 2 officers have been dismissed and senior commanders formally reprimanded as a result. The inquiry found Israeli forces mistakenly believed that they were attacking Hamas gunmen when drone strikes hit the 3 vehicles of the World Central Kitchen aid group late on Monday night. And the standard procedures had been violated. The killing of the 7 aid workers, which included citizens of Britain, Australia, and Poland, a dual US and Canadian national, and a Palestinian colleague, triggered global outrage this week. The military said the aid convoy, the light vehicles had been accompanying them, had stopped at a hangar where the trucks were unloaded before moving, and provided aerial photographs and graphics showing different positions of the WCK convoy. Now, we have 7 aid workers killed. We have half the population of Gaza facing starvation by July. We have what is being called the largest, most broadest humanitarian crisis in the world right now. And yet we are yet to see world leaders really come at Netanyahu and force him to stop the atrocities that are going on in Gaza. I think this being a situation where you do have a dual US-Canadian citizen, where you have 3 British citizens being killed, that you now have some world leaders in the West saying, okay, enough is enough. But I believe enough was enough a very long time ago. And this is absolutely shameful from the IDF, from Netanyahu himself, who is obviously facing his own political crisis at home. A member of the war cabinet has called for early elections in September. So I really wonder when the atrocities in Gaza are going to come to an end.
All right, now authorities in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, have announced the ban on begging, including the use of hand cards in an effort to address urban disorder. The ban aims to improve living conditions, enhance safety, and ease traffic congestion. Now, previous attempts to curb begging, such as the 2013 prohibition at street junctions, have been ineffective. The ban follows recent mass eviction and demolitions in the city's slums. Abidjan, with a population of about 6 million, faces significant traffic congestion and is among the most congested cities in Africa. I can say for sure that when I was there for about a month, I actually did witness some of this, and it's congested, but not as congested as Lagos. So it was still a nice reprieve, whichever way I looked at it. But I must say that this menace of begging, it's always got me torn, because the question is, humanity, your humanity side will want to say you must always help people, but some people have made this an occupation, and they are not begging because they have needs, but they are begging because they see it as a job and a means of livelihood. And it's unfortunate this has happened. And so many people have seen the very, very good side of begging, so to speak, if there is any. And so many people, it has actually attracted more and more people into that particular, what I want to say, trade at the moment.
Yes. I mean, I would say that, yeah, I do disagree because I don't think a lot of people are begging for financial reasons. I think that these issues exist in societies without a proper social security net. We have poor social welfare facilities. We have poor social welfare infrastructure, not only in Abidjan, but in Nigeria. And therefore, you will have people who are resorting to begging. It's not just, yes, it is especially in urban areas and in cities that are trying to modernize, it can seem like it's just a menace. However, this exists because of the socio-economic conditions that exist.
Now, the reason why I say that is because if you look at Nigeria, for example, during the Goodluck Jonathan era, the president himself, the then president, did so much for the Almajiris. And there were stories that emerged that schools, accommodations that were being provided for these individuals were completely abandoned, because they would prefer to go back to what they were doing as against being probably walled or cordoned off in a particular building or a confined space, so to speak.
But now we do have nomadic schools for nomadic people. You know, at the end of the day, we can't try and force people into a structure that wasn't built to accommodate them. We must accommodate the structure to the people. Now let's take the next story, because we're still on the theme of reigning in social malaise. President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone has declared a national emergency on rising incidents of drug abuse, particularly the synthetic drug Kush. The mixture, similar to cannabis and tramadol, has been prevalent in urban areas for years. President Bio has described the situation as an existential threat to the country, spotlighting the devastating impact of drugs and addiction on communities. The government is working to dismantle drug trafficking networks and has established a rehabilitation center for victims of drug abuse. Sierra Leone's neighbors, Guinea and Liberia, are also facing similar challenges with Kush consumption. In Liberia, President Joseph Boakai declared drug abuse as a public health emergency in January. How do you feel about that?
It's always been a public health emergency, whichever way you look at it. It's just when the government decides to stand up and take notice. Because the truth is this, like the Americans have actually found out in their war against drugs, eliminating drug use and consumption is almost impossible. You can actually only reduce it and try to control it, and more importantly, create avenues for rehabilitation and all these other structures that would help people. Because the truth is this, these things run very, very deep, and people will do everything to actually keep peddling these things because of the financial high side of it. And we're happy that when the government decides to rise to say we want to begin to tackle this problem, it abates a little bit. It does. And if they continue and they create a structure that helps reduce it, trust me, it goes a long, long way.
Definitely. I think that what is going on in Western Africa is definitely something that I believe that the Nigerian government should pay attention to, because it's not only punitive measures that curb drug abuse and drug use. At the end of the day, we do have a crisis which is youth unemployment. When you have a large population of young people who have no jobs, who have poor access to education, who have low economic stability, then you are going to have a prevalence of drug use. And obviously, when there is drug abuse, you also have rising criminal elements within society. I think declaring it as a public health emergency shows the severity and the seriousness of the issue, especially when it comes to health, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to physical health, and when it comes to the outcomes that are available for young Africans, not just in Liberia and Sierra Leone, but also in Nigeria. So I definitely agree with you that it is important that we focus on drug issues and not just about, punishing it but also about how come we do have young people who are becoming more and more addicted to these substances.
But another thing you should also note, social stratification sometimes does not really have anything to do with the consumption of all these drugs, because peer pressure, the availability, more importantly, because the availability, if there's always a demand, certainly there will be, life says that there will be equivalent supply. And we've seen that happen time and time again. I always believe that when you can reduce the supply, then the demand actually wanes. And also, because the way we've seen people actually go about life, peer pressure has played a huge role in people, because we've seen that it is moved from a lower strata to even the middle and the upper class, whereby consumption is actually cutting across all sectors.
Well, I would say that, we do need the government to do more structural intervention.
All right, I want to say that's all we can actually take on the week that was. But before we go, a magnitude 4.8 earthquake struck New York City late on Friday. Buildings shook and nerves were rattled, but no damage or injuries have been reported. The epicenter of the tremor was in New Jersey, as it was the strongest recorded in the Northeast U.S. in more than a decade. Now, state officials say inspections are taking place to ensure buildings, bridges, and other infrastructures aren't damaged.
Approximately 1 hour ago, millions of New Yorkers felt the effects of a 4.8% or 4.8 magnitude earthquake, the epicenter of which was in central New Jersey. That is about 45 miles west of Manhattan. We actually felt it here in the capital in Albany. People felt it on Long Island and all over the state of New York and indeed the East Coast. We're taking this extremely seriously, and here's why. There is always the possibility of aftershocks, and I'll get to that in a moment, but we have not felt the magnitude of an earthquake of this level since about 2011. Actually, I was in Washington. This is one of the largest earthquakes on the East Coast to occur in the last century. So I immediately directed my emergency management team, the second we received word of this, to start doing damage assessments, any life in danger, and finding out whether there's any bridges or tunnels that are compromised. And so, and I want to announce that right now, JFK and Newark airports are on full ground stops to assess any potential for after effects. And we've been in contact with the utility companies to make sure that the gas and electric services continue. I will report that Amtrak and MTA are on full schedule, no disruption there at this time. Right now, it's most important that we have our structural teams out there, our engineering teams, surveying our bridges, our roads, any area there could be a fault line that is not easily detectable, to make sure that passengers on our rails as well as our commuters are safe. At this point, heading into an hour and a half after the effects, we've not identified any life-threatening situations, but we are certainly asking our local law enforcement and emergency services teams to be on guard for that as well. But again, we are going to be reviewing all potentially vulnerable infrastructure sites.
Well, back here in Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu has declared the probe into the Central Bank of Nigeria closed and commended special investigator Jim Obazie for a job well done. On July 30th, 2023, the president appointed Obazie as a special investigator to probe the Apex Bank and related entities. Tinubu noted that with the investigations closed, all appropriate law enforcement and regulatory agencies have since begun conducting follow-up action.
Now, popular cross-dresser Idris Okuneye, also known as Bobrisky, on Friday pleaded guilty to charges of abuse of the Naira currency and money laundering before Justice Abimbola Awogboro of the Federal High Court here in Lagos. Bobrisky was arrested and detained by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission on Thursday for spraying Naira notes at a party recently held in Lagos. During the court proceedings, Bobrisky claimed to be unaware of the law prohibiting currency spraying. He requested a second chance to educate the public about proper currency handling through a video on his social media platforms. However, Justice Awogboro emphasized that ignorance of the law was not an excuse. While the judge acknowledged Bobrisky's request, the case was adjourned until the 9th of April 2024 to determine judgment. But Bobrisky was ordered to remain in EFCC custody pending the final ruling.
Idris is a first offender, and by the relevant provisions of Administration of Criminal Justice Act, the court will not impose maximum punishment to her. What is the punishment? 6 months or 50,000 fine, either of the two. And the EFCC, they've considered to fine. And they've even accepted the defendant's request.
That's all on the week that was.